The sweet taste of lies. Alyssa always believed her life was perfect. A loving husband, a beautiful home, stability. She had everything a woman could ever ask for, or at least that's what she thought. But one seemingly insignificant evening changed everything. She had just finished her evening workout and decided to stop by a small cafe for a latte. It was her little ritual, 5 minutes of peace before heading home to her husband, Mark. But that night, fate had different plans. As she entered the cafe, the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. The warm lighting gave everything a golden glow, making the place feel cozy, almost intimate. She was about to place her order when she noticed him, Daniel. He was sitting near the window, dressed in a simple black shirt that accentuated his toned frame. He had an air of confidence, the kind that made people stop and take notice. His deep blue eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, she felt as if he could see right through her. A slow smirk spread across his lips as he leaned forward slightly. "Looking for something?" he asked, his voice smooth, almost teasing. Alyssa felt a rush of heat rise to her cheeks. She had no reason to entertain this conversation. She was married, happily married. And yet, something about him made her hesitate. Maybe, she found herself replying before she could even think. That was the moment it all began. Alyssa took her coffee and hesitated for a second. She could just turn around, walk away, and pretend nothing happened. But instead, she found herself sliding into the seat across from Daniel. She told herself it was harmless, just a conversation with a stranger. But deep down, something inside her whispered a different truth. "You look like you're running from something," Daniel said, stirring his espresso. Alyssa raised an eyebrow. "And what makes you think that?" "Because people who are truly happy don't hesitate before making simple choices." His words sent a jolt through her. She wanted to dismiss them, to argue, but she couldn't. Maybe because deep down, she knew he was right. "I'm not running from anything," she said, forcing a smile. "I have a great life." Daniel chuckled softly. "Sure. Keep telling yourself that." She should have been offended. Instead, she was intrigued. That night, Alyssa went home feeling restless. Mark greeted her with his usual warm smile, kissed her forehead, and asked about her day. She answered like she always did, routine, predictable. But for the first time, she found herself thinking about how different Daniel was. And then it happened. One text. A simple, mysterious message that popped up on her phone just as she was about to fall asleep. "Unknown number, still sure you're not running?" Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't given him her number. How did he? Her hands trembled as she typed back. "Alyssa, who is this?" No response. Minutes passed. Then an hour. But sleep never came. She stared at the ceiling, her thoughts tangled. A part of her wanted to delete the message, forget this ever happened. But another part of her, the part she didn't like to acknowledge, was excited. The next morning, Alyssa couldn't shake the message from her mind. Mark kissed her goodbye before heading to work, as he always did, but she barely noticed. Her fingers itched to check her phone. No new messages. Disappointment settled in her chest, but she quickly shoved it away. What was she expecting? That Daniel, or whoever sent that message, would chase her. She forced herself to go about her day. Meetings, errands, small talk with friends. But her mind kept drifting back to him. To his knowing smirk. To the way his words burrowed under her skin. And then, as she was about to head home, her phone buzzed. "Unknown number, meet me where we first talked." 8 p.m. Her breath caught in her throat. Alyssa stared at the message, her pulse quickening. This was dangerous. Reckless. Stupid. She should ignore it. Delete it. Go home to her husband and pretend none of this ever happened. But she didn't. At exactly 8 p.m., she found herself walking into the dimly lit cafe. Daniel was already there, leaning back in his chair, watching her with an amused expression. "I was starting to think you wouldn't come," he said. Alyssa sat down slowly, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Neither did I. He chuckled. Honest. I like that. She exhaled, trying to steady herself. Why did you text me? Daniel tilted his head, studying her. Because you're searching for something. And I think I know what it is. She swallowed. And what do you think I'm searching for? He leaned in, his voice low. Something real. Her stomach tightened. Because for the first time in a long time, she wondered if he was right, the sweet taste of lies, the finale. Alyssa's breath hitched as Daniel's words lingered in the air. Something real. She wanted to scoff, to dismiss him as just another distraction, but deep down, she knew the truth. She hadn't felt truly alive in years. Mark was stability. Predictability. But Daniel? He was fire, danger, a taste of the unknown. And that terrified her. She stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. This was a mistake. Daniel didn't stop her. He simply smirked, as if he had already won. You'll be back. Alyssa spun on her heel and walked out, ignoring the ache in her chest. That night, she lay beside Mark, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding. His steady breaths filled the silence. Her phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark. She had a choice. One text, one call, and she could dive into chaos. Into passion. Into something that would either set her free or destroy her entirely. Or she could close her eyes, turn over, and pretend none of this ever happened. Minutes passed. Then, slowly, she reached for her phone. And typed. I can't stop thinking about you. She hovered over the send button, fingers trembling. A deep breath. A moment of hesitation. Then, message sent. And with it, the last piece of her resistance shattered. The sweet taste of lies had never felt so intoxicating. The end. Smiling face with horns fire.